Scene 1, October 2025, late night, living room, after everyone's asleep. I remember staring at my phone like it was gonna bite me. It was October when I made that post, asking strangers on r/surviving infidelity if I should reach out to my wife's affair partner's wife. Ex-wife now, but back then she was still my wife, still sleeping in the same house, still moving through our days like nothing had happened. And I was sitting on the couch, lights off, thumb hovering over post, feeling like I was about to do something irreversible. Because here's the part that still makes me feel stupid when I say it out loud. I found out in the first week of September that my wife had been having an affair for over a year. And then I found out I was 10 months late to the whole thing. His wife, the affair partner's wife, found out in December 2024. She tried to reach me. She actually did reach me, and I never knew. 10 months late to the party. That's what I wrote. That's what it felt like. And the comments on that post were basically unanimous. Yes, contact her. She deserves to know you know. You need to confirm what's real. I sat with that for days, then weeks, and even after I wrote the email, I didn't send it. I just kept rereading it like it was a confession. Because I was scared. Not scared of what she'd say, scared of what it would mean if she confirmed everything I suspected.
Fall 2024. Various nights. Kitchen, driveway, bedroom. To understand why I didn't see it sooner, I have to back up. Fall of 2024. I was suspicious, not in a clean, logical way, more like a low-grade, constant discomfort I couldn't name. She'd say things like, "I'm just going out with friends," and I'd nod and act normal, but my gut would tighten. She'd be on her phone a lot, screen angled away, little half smiles that didn't match what was happening in the room. But every time I tried to grab onto something solid, it slipped away. And there's something I need to say clearly. I wasn't sober. I was drinking enough that my internal compass wasn't reliable. Or maybe it was reliable and I kept overriding it because it was easier than confronting what I didn't want to know. My magic trick after a few drinks was passing out on the couch. I'd tell myself I was resting or just tired, but I know what it was. It was checking out. It was escaping. It was letting my marriage run on autopilot while I sank into whatever numbness alcohol gave me. So when I look back at those months, I don't see a guy who was sharp and observant. I see a guy who was dulled down, emotionally, mentally, physically. And I'm not saying that to excuse anything. I'm saying it because it's true. As of Friday, February 6th, I'm 9 months sober. That sobriety has taught me something uncomfortable. My intuition was trying to talk to me back then. I just wasn't in a place to listen. And I also need to own this. My drinking caused dissatisfaction and damage in my marriage. I take full accountability for that. If she wanted a divorce because of it, if she had looked me in the face and said, "I can't do this anymore," I would have deserved that. 1,000%. But I didn't control her choices. She did. And I didn't deserve an 18-month affair.
Early September 2025, 2 a.m., bedroom. The phone calls. The moment everything changed was boring on the surface. It was the middle of the night. The house had that dead quiet it gets when everyone's finally down. The faint hum of the HVAC, the fridge cycling, maybe a distant car passing. And then my wife's phone lit up. One call. Then, almost immediately, another. Back to back. Same number. The kind of thing that pulls you out of sleep because your brain goes, "Who's calling at this hour twice?" I lay there for a second, watching her phone glow on the nightstand. My heart was doing that slow thump-thump like it already knew. She didn't answer. She didn't wake up. Or maybe she pretended not to. I don't know. But after the second call stopped, I sat up. And for the first time in my life, I did something I'd always judged other people for doing. I picked up her phone. My hands were clumsy, not because I was drunk, I wasn't, but because I was shaking. That adrenaline you get when you know you're about to step into something you can't unsee. I checked the call log. Same number, twice, right there. My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical, like missing a step going downstairs. I didn't even know what I was hoping to find. A wrong number? A work emergency? Anything that wasn't what it looked like. But it looked like exactly what it was. Next morning, kitchen table, iPad searches, and a name. The next day, everything in the house looked the same. Same kitchen, same light coming through the window, same coffee smell. But I wasn't living in the same reality anymore. I waited until I had a minute alone and started pulling threads. I checked the number again, searched it. Then I remembered something that made my skin go cold. A few months earlier, our iPad had some web searches saved. I'd noticed them at the time and brushed them off because I didn't want to be paranoid. Now I went back and looked. There it was, an address. Not ours, not a friend's house I recognized, not a business, just an address. And when I searched that address with the phone number, it clicked into place. A name surfaced, a person who was not me. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the screen, feeling my brain trying to reject it like bad food. Like if I just stared long enough, reality would blink first. I kept digging, and that's when I found out he was married. That detail hit me differently than I expected. It wasn't relief. It wasn't even anger right away. It was this bitter clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was a system. 2 adults, 2 families, 2 lives, and they'd been doing this long enough that it had a rhythm. I found his wife's information, or ex-wife, technically. I didn't know that yet. I found contact details, social profiles, anything that could help me confirm I wasn't building a case out of thin air. And then I saw something that made my throat tighten. Her number showed up in the call logs too, not just in my wife's phone history, in connection with my number as well, meaning she had tried to reach me, meaning this whole thing had been sitting there like an unopened letter for 10 months. October 15th, 2025. Email draft. 2 weeks of fear. After I made that Reddit post and people told me to reach out, I drafted an email. October 15th. I remember the date because I saved it like a file I couldn't delete. I wrote it like I was walking barefoot through glass. Simple, direct, no threats. Something like, I believe our spouses had an affair. I'm reaching out to confirm what I've found. I'm sorry to contact you like this. I stared at that email for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of opening it, rereading it, changing one sentence, closing it again. Because hitting send felt like stepping off a cliff. Not because I thought she'd attack me, because if she responded, I'd be forced to accept the full shape of what my wife had been doing, and I wasn't sure I could carry that. One night I sat there in the dark with the laptop light on my face and my finger hovering over the trackpad, and I just thought, be a man, hit send, find out what's real. So I did, and then I waited. November 4th, 2025. The text message, not an email. 3 weeks went by. Nothing. Every day I'd check my email like an idiot. Refresh, scroll, nothing. Then on November 4th, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Hi, this is her. I got your email. I read it twice just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. She didn't respond by email. She responded by text. And right away I could tell she was nervous. Not dramatic nervous, real nervous. The kind where every message feels measured. At first, she didn't want to talk. She said she'd been warned. He told her, her ex-husband, that if she talked to me, he'd make her life very difficult. And the way she wrote it, it didn't sound like a vague threat.
It sounded like something she believed could actually happen. So I slowed down. I told her I wasn't looking to blow anything up publicly. I wasn't trying to contact her daughter. I wasn't trying to start a war. I told her I needed confirmation, and I promised something I meant. This stays private. I'm not sharing your name. I'm not telling my wife you spoke to me. I just need the truth. There was a long pause between texts, minutes. Then she started talking. Text conversation, the confirmation and the lies. The more she wrote, the more I realized she was a normal person who'd been dragged through something awful. Not someone looking for revenge, not someone trying to win. Just someone who'd already been shattered and was trying to rebuild with whatever dignity she had left. She confirmed what I had found. She also told me a couple things I didn't know, details that filled in gaps and made the timeline uglier. And then she said something that made my face go hot with a mix of anger and disbelief. She told me that her ex-husband had painted me as the villain. He told her I was an abusive alcoholic having an affair. I remember reading that and laughing once, just this sharp, humorless sound. Because I'll own the alcoholic part. I don't run from that. But abusive? No. Unfaithful? Never. And I sat there with my phone in my hand thinking, so that's the story they told themselves. Not just that they were unhappy, not just that they fell in love. They needed me to be a monster so they could feel clean. And even after everything she'd been through, she still took the time to correct the record with me 10 months after the fact, because she understood what it meant to have your reality rewritten. I thanked her, like genuinely, probably too many times, because I knew what it cost her to talk about it again. And I meant it when I told her, I hope you find peace. Her divorce, their daughter, and the part that hit me hardest. She told me she filed for divorce 2 weeks after she found out in December 2024. 2 weeks. That kind of decisive action is almost hard to imagine when you're still stuck in the fog. She said my wife was the main reason she did it, because her husband told her he loved my wife and wanted to be with her. They had a 15-year-old daughter. 15. I pictured a teenager in a house full of tension, hearing half conversations, watching adults pretend. They'd been together 20 years, married 16, and now their daughter was forbidden to ever talk to my wife. That detail stuck in my chest like a stone, because affairs aren't just two people, they're blast radius. I looked down the hallway toward my own kid's room, my almost 3-year-old little girl, and I felt this surge of panic. Not just about my marriage ending, about what kind of chaos she might be forced to grow up inside. Then came the part that made me feel both furious and sick. I started digging through my own phone, and I found her number, AP's ex-wife's number, in my blocked caller list. On my iPhone. I also found her Instagram and Facebook accounts blocked on my social media. Not by me, by my wife. The ex-wife told me she tried calling me. She left a voicemail telling me to call her back after she found out in December 2024. I never saw the calls. I never heard the voicemail. I never saw her accounts, because my wife had quietly blocked every path that could have led to the truth. And the reason she could pull that off so easily was simple. I was drinking. My magic trick, like I said, was passing out on the couch. She didn't have to hide much. She just had to wait until I was gone mentally. That's a hard thing to admit without hating yourself a little. Because yes, if I'd gotten control of my drinking years earlier, maybe I would have seen it. Maybe I would have been present enough to notice the cracks widening. But also, blocking someone who's trying to warn your spouse isn't a crack. It's a decision, a calculated one. Legal separation, my investigation, and her watching me. By the time October rolled around, my wife had already filed for legal separation. I was in that early stage where your brain becomes a detective because your heart can't handle ambiguity.
So I went full send on an OSINT investigation, digging through what I could find, keeping call logs, notes, timelines. I made a folder on my laptop and disguised it, thinking that would be enough. It wasn't. She knew the password to my laptop, and one night I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Evidence that she'd been in the folder. Not just once, she'd clicked through everything. Every file, every doc, every note. It felt like being watched in your own mind. Then one evening I went to my AA meeting. The room smelled like burnt coffee and cheap cleaner. Folding chairs, people nodding at each other like survivors. I left my backpack at home. When I got back later that night, something felt off, like items weren't sitting the way I'd left them. The next morning at work, I opened my bag and knew immediately. It had been gone through. That sudden hot panic hit me. Not just fear, alarm. Because I realized she wasn't just hiding, she was actively monitoring. And I did what scared people do when they feel exposed. I nuked everything. I deleted my previous Reddit post, deleted my Reddit account, changed my laptop password. It wasn't brave, it was survival mode. And the craziest part, that same morning, coincidentally, she texted me, "I want to pause the separation. I want to work on myself, then us." I stared at that text, thinking, so you're reading me, you're watching me. But I wanted to believe her. I wanted a path that didn't end in divorce. So I agreed. We put a 90-day abeyance on the separation.
The 90 days, nothing happened. On paper, it sounded hopeful. In real life, it was quiet. She got therapy, but we didn't talk. We didn't sit down and rip the bandage off. We didn't have the ugly, necessary conversations. We didn't rebuild anything. It was like we both agreed to live in a house where a fire had happened, but we'd just keep the lights low and pretend the smoke smell would fade on its own. And during that time, my sobriety got stronger. My intuition got louder. I stopped second-guessing every feeling. Because when you're sober, you can't blame the alcohol for your perception. You have to face what's actually in front of you. And what was in front of me was a marriage full of silence and a betrayal we were pretending didn't exist.
February 8th, 2026, The Confrontation, 2 hours. Sunday night, February 8th. The house was settled, the kind of evening where you can hear the dishwasher running and the small sounds of a life that's supposed to feel safe. I finally grew a spine. I sat down with her and said it. Not screaming, not dramatic, just direct. I know about the affair. She didn't deny it. That was almost the most surreal part. No instant argument, no fake confusion, just a pause, and then her face shifted, the look of someone realizing the game is over. She was apologetic. She said she was sorry. I told her only a small portion of how I found out. I didn't give her the full map. I didn't mention the ex-wife at all, because I had promised that woman privacy, and I meant it. We talked for almost 2 hours, not just about the affair, but about us, the unhappiness, the distance, the damage, my drinking, her choices, all of it. It wasn't a clean conversation. It wasn't some movie scene where everything gets resolved. It was two exhausted adults trying to speak honestly while standing in the wreckage. There were moments she sounded sincere. There were moments I felt the old patterns, gaslighting, manipulation, hovering at the edges, waiting to slip back in. And I told her that. I'm skeptical, I said, because I've felt manipulated before. She didn't fight me on it. At the end of it, we agreed on one thing without hesitation. We need to work together to figure out separation or divorce. Because we have an almost 3-year-old little girl, and her happiness, her quality of life is the most important thing, not our pride, not our resentment, not our need to win the narrative. Her. So that's where it ended. Not with closure, not with some triumphant revenge,
just with the reality that we have to be adults now in the most painful way, and I'm sober enough to see it clearly. I can own what I did to damage our marriage, but I can also finally say, without blinking, I didn't choose this affair. She did. And now we both have to choose what kind of parents we're going to be on the other side of it.